Hi, I'm Arvindh, one of the organizers behind TTRPGCon. And this episode of Hacking Attention, I'm going to be interviewing myself about what we're doing at TTRPGCon and how that can lead to us being able to learn lessons about hacking attention. Let's dive in. What was the original spark behind TTRPGCon, and how did it evolve from an idea into a full-fledged two-day convention at Bangalore Creative Circus? TTRPGCon is a two-day convention that's happening in Bangalore on November 8th and 9th, 2025 for the first time. It's a big one for us. We have 18 game masters and over 200 players coming in to experience the magic of tabletop role-playing games. We have games like Dungeons and Dragons, Call of Cthulhu, and a whole host of other systems. The reason why we wanted to do this is because of three things. Number one, we wanted to get people to try tabletop RPGs for the first time. Second, we wanted to make sure that people who have already played some sort of a tabletop RPG, like Dungeons and Dragons, they can go ahead and try other systems. And third, we wanted to make sure that anybody who is already a part of this community, that they're not fragmented, but they actually have a place to join and play more games. But this didn't start this way. In fact, the way it started is a really fun and interesting story. Earlier this year, we had this event called TTOX. It is an event which is the largest board game conventions in Bangalore. Earlier this year, we had TTOX. It is India's largest board game convention, and it's run by my dear friends, Falgun and Shweta. Now, I've been a part of this for the longest time. I've attended every single one of them except for the first one. And in each one of these, I've been running games like Dungeons and Dragons. Now, the first time I ran, I was the only dungeon master over there, and I think I ran about 8 or 9 games the first time. And it was a breathtaking experience. I think I must have introduced about 50, 55 people to the magic of tabletop RPGs as things were going. That one person running 7 games changed to 2 people, changed to 4. And the last TTOX, we had about 5 game masters running a whole bunch of different adventures simultaneously. Now, don't get me wrong, I love board games. I love the magic and the joy and the fun that they bring us. But tabletop RPGs are close to my heart, right? In fact, I got started with TTRPGs before I started playing board games. And what ended up happening was at the end of the previous TTOX, we were like, this was a lot of fun. And I wish we could do this in a bigger scale. I wish that we could get a lot more people to come and play. And it's not just about board games, but also other fringe experiences beyond TTRPGs, let's say Magic the Gathering, or other GM-less, prep-less games like Fiasco or something. And I walked up to a bunch of friends like, hey, do you want to do this? Just have a smaller version of TTOX, but just for TTRPGs? And a couple of lunatics actually said yes. And that's how our story began. So then, of course, like any great idea, like any great adventure, we ended up planning for the name, for the convention ideas, what all would it have, what all would it not have, what were our goals. We did all that planning. It went okay for some time, but our energy and motivation panned out. Plummeted. We were like this close to canceling this whole concept because I didn't want to take in any sort of a financial loss. But one of my friends, Shanks, he's like, Macha, if we don't do this now, when are we going to do it? So I was like, fuck it, we fireball. And ta-da! TTRPGCon happened. By no means am I the only one behind this. There's a big team of almost 8 people who are helping make this happen. But that's how it started, from that spark of having that, oh man, I wish I could play more TTRPGs, into this 2-day event that's happening at the Bangalore Creative Circus. For those unfamiliar with tabletop role-playing games, how would you describe what makes them so engaging and different from other types of games? Now, tabletop RPGs are amazing, all right? And they are somewhat different than board games. With board games, what you have is a very specific way of interacting with the system. In game design terms, you have mechanics and you have components, right? But the rules and the narrative that are present in board games are largely fixed. Some larger games, let's say Vantage or Aeon's End or Iridia or Chronicles of Maladum, these all have existing Chronicles of Duragor and Maladum, messed up. All of these games, they have a set narrative, right? And At times, when you are operating within those confines, it gets very constricting. When you contrast that with tabletop role-playing games, the difference is massive. And the biggest one is in terms of player agency. Like, what is it that the player can do? The way tabletop role-playing games work is you have a bunch of people sitting together around a table, and you are coming together to tell a story. You're all playing to find out what happens, and you're all collaborating. You're not competing with each other in the traditional way that board games would have you do. One person, usually the game master or the dungeon master or the keeper, whatever they're called, depending on the system that you're using, they provide the context, right? They set the scene, so to speak. And then everybody else, they just take on the roles of various characters. You could be adventurers, you could be school kids, what have you, depending on the system. And you are interacting with that scene that the dungeon master has provided. It's essentially just long-form improv. Now, there is a third player within the scene, and that is the dice. When you're attempting to do something, when you're attempting to interact with the scene that the game master has presented, there might be things that go awry. And that happens because of the dice. Because you're attempting something which may or may not be successful. And that's when you roll the dice, and the dice often dictate the story. And more often than not, they take you in random, ridiculous, and amazingly fun directions that you would have not thought of. So it's a bunch of people sitting around a table, using their imagination and telling stories, along with the help of dice to take them in new directions. That's it. That is a tabletop role-playing game. Now, beautiful thing is, in a TTRPG, you are limited only by your imagination. Think about it. In a board game, you have specific ways to interact with the system. In TTRPGs too, you have these rules, and these rules are usually scaffolding, things that will help you understand what are the different ways you can process the different actions that players can do. But the actions that players want to do, it's entirely up to their imagination. If you imagine it, you can do it. For example, in one of the games where I played as a player, one of the very few games where I played as a player, I managed to take strong iron manacles and chains, grab them, jump out of a tower onto the back of a black dragon, and hobble it by tying the chain and manacles around the dragon's mouth and wings. And when it plummeted, I managed to do a judo throw midair as a barbarian and land on the dragon's soft belly, unscathed. That kind of magical stuff, it happens only in tabletop role-playing games. Another cool aspect of tabletop role-playing games is that they tie in directly to something that is a fundamental human essence, a fundamental human nature or skill, and that is storytelling. We all have stories. We all live different experiences, and we like to share them. Across cultures, across space, across time, we've all had a strong culture of storytelling. And what tabletop role-playing games do is they give you a scaffolding with which you can turn these stories to be interactive. And that makes it a beautiful and wonderful experience, because I can take stories from my culture and remix it, so to speak, with stories from somebody else's culture. And you might end up with Japanese / South Indian / Magitech examples, which are absolutely unheard of. Hey, and that's only possible with TTRPGs. You mentioned that TTRPGCon is inspired by TTOX. What specific aspects did you borrow, remix, or improve upon? TTRPGCon obviously is not a brand new or novel idea, right? I am very proud to say that we are standing on the shoulders of giants. We're taking things that have already worked and remixing them, so to speak, right, to match our needs. Now, one of the key inspirations for TTRPGCon is TTOX. I was there, front and center. I had ringside seats. I think that's what they say in NBA parlance, to what amazing work Falgun and Shweta were doing. When I say amazing, it's because it has a few very important ingredients, all right? First one is the way they involved the community, right? They gave and gave to the community, and when they needed something, the community stood up and volunteered. Right? It was like that scene in Hunger Games where everyone's rising up as tribute, that sort of a thing. And I thought, holy cow, that is amazing. I totally need to do that. So that was the first idea I took. The second was the fact that most of the stuff that was happening at TTOX is volunteer driven. And I thought, hey, TTRPGCon needs the same thing, right? Which is, I cannot be a one-person thing running this whole show. I need the help of others. And inherently, we needed all the support of game masters that we can get. So that was the second idea, inspired by TTOX, where I got, okay, we need to get volunteers, we need to get the community involved and all of that. And beyond that, behind the scenes, Falgun and Shweta, the team behind TTOX, have been ridiculously supportive, not just by giving tablecloths, which they have done, but by also sharing ideas, giving advice, giving me hope and courage, and sharing like my contacts, pointing me to people, and coming on board as sponsors. I cannot thank them enough. And these are just like the few ways how TTOX itself has helped us become like, and this is how TTOX has actually helped us ship the MVP, the minimum viable product of what TTRPGCon can be. Of course, beyond that, we borrowed ideas from other places as well. I was reading up on how to run convention games. I was reading up on how different systems can work. And of course, my friends online and abroad have been giving me a lot of inputs in terms of how do we schedule stuff? How do we present the different systems? How can we engage people? What are the things that we need? All of that input and knowledge has come from the river. The river is my people, and I am a river to my people, if that makes sense.
What was the biggest logistical or creative challenge in coordinating volunteer game masters and sponsor activations?
Now, I've spoken a lot about volunteers, right? But they're just one of the stakeholders. The other stakeholders, which would be like a subset of volunteers, are the game masters themselves. And without them, this event is not happening. Of course, this is the first time we're running the event, and we are spending a ton of money in terms of the venue and the rentals for the furniture and ticketing and having all the supplies that we need, having all the games. So there's a lot of money going into that. I am very fortunate that game masters are volunteering to do this for free. Personally, I think that's a great way. And any success that we have, we will be sharing with our game masters as well. Now, they're just one part of the equation, right? And they're a very important part. The other stakeholders are the players, and they're coming from all sorts of places. We went around Bangalore running games, talking about TTRPGCon and inviting people to be a part of it. We didn't do too much in terms of advertising, but our sponsors, or the other stakeholders, they were very grateful in terms, we are very grateful to them because they graciously stepped in and helped us run some ads to get more eyeballs and visibility. They were sharing it in their own communities. And I really love the way this whole event has grown from like a grassroots thing, right? It's not like the big flashy marketing thing that I'm used to from my earlier avatar as a head of marketing from before. No, this is more of a grassroots thing where everything's happening because of personal connections, favors owed, games run, and a little bit of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours type thing, especially with the good friends in the organizing committee. But there have been logistical challenges. There have been creative challenges as well, right? So when we're forming the team, we needed to make sure that the expectations were matching. And of course, that wasn't always the case. We did struggle with that, but over time, we managed to iron that out. Health concerns, not being able to participate as much as they would like because of other commitments at work. Nobody's like a full-time volunteer at TTRPGCon. We all have our own businesses or our own jobs to attend to. And oftentimes that could get in the way. And of course, ticket sales are always a nightmare because you're like, can I break even? Can I break even? Can I break even? Luckily, we had sponsors to help us out this time, but we also noticed that when it's the end of the month, people don't necessarily have that kind of disposable income. So once salaries came in, ticket sales went up. Thank goodness for that. And beyond that, because we're running TTRPGCon for the first time, we didn't have a playbook. We didn't have a standard operating procedure that we could use to go ahead and ship everything perfectly. So we had to make a ton of mistakes in figuring stuff out. Like, what are the governmental approvals that we need to run an event? How does Shopify work? How do payment gateways work? How do you mix the two? Or how do you connect the two? What sort of fees do you need to pay? It was almost like a death by 1,000 cuts. But we're still standing, right? We might have rolled a 3 or 4, but we're still happening. We're still able to ship what's been happening. Of course, none of this is going to be possible without everybody putting in elbow grease and spirit to make it happen.
How did you design the event experience to be friendly to complete beginners who've never rolled dice before?
One of the key things we kept in mind when we were designing the experience is that it has to be absolutely newbie friendly. And what I mean by that is I'm referring to the 3 core ideals that we have for TTRPGCon, right? First is to introduce people who've never played TTRPGs before to this wonderful hobby. The second was to see how we can introduce people who already played a system or two, like Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder, to new systems. And third was to help them join the communities that are available. Now, every single decision was made by using these 3 philosophies as a razor, right? When we are trying to say, oh, should we include this system or not? Oh, what should we include in the library? Oh, how should we set up the table? What do we have in the game library itself? What are the assets that we need to bring? Every single decision that we made was tied back to that one thing, which is how can we make this absolutely seamless for a new player? We also did a couple of other things. I created a free online course called the 10,000 Game Masters course, which is designed to help people who have already played some tabletop role-playing games to design and run their first homebrew adventure. I used to do that as a cohort-based course before, but then after I've tested it and ironed out the kinks, I turned it into a video course. I've been maintaining that community as well, and we've been using that community to source game masters for our event. I swear to God, when I was doing that, the 10,000 GMs thing, I didn't think about, oh, it'll be useful for TTRPGCon. Just a happy little accident. And looking backwards, I'm able to connect to the whole thing. Now, the second thing that we did was for players as well. We made a bunch of instructional videos and tutorials on how to play TTRPGs. One thing that I wanted to do, but wasn't able to, was to actually publish a recording of an actual play where I'm playing the game with others and they can understand how the whole thing works. But fortunately, we have a whole bunch of online actual plays available. And beyond that, one of the things that we made sure about making this absolutely foolproof is our game masters, right? They have been given very specific instructions and a set of instructions to follow for making this experience as easy as possible. We have things like the X card to make sure that boundaries are not crossed. We have things like a code of conduct. We have at every step of the way, made sure that we are able to put the player first and design that entire experience around them. In fact, a lot of them were a part of us in terms of the design process and the build process, because they are players themselves, and we took their input when we were deciding what is it that we can actually have as a part of this experience.
Let's talk about the venue, Bangalore Creative Circus. Why that space, and how does it add to the atmosphere you're trying to build?
One of the coolest things about TTRPGCon is the location. We're doing this in collaboration with Bangalore Creative Circus, and that space is eclectic, to say the least. It's got a mix of post-apocalyptic field plus grunge, plus art. It's got a very bohemian spirit. And I particularly love that because of that combination of vibes. The kind of games that we have coming up at the convention, they are an eclectic mix as well. We have science fiction, we have Mad Max style gaslands, we have sword and sandal sorcery, we got zombies, we got eldritch abominations, we have all of those things. And one thing that I really hope that players can experience is leaving all their worries behind outside. And when they enter the table, they enter the magic circle. And one thing that I believe really, really helps with players entering that magic circle is how easy it is to disassociate from reality. And I'm using that in a very specific way. What I mean by that is outside the magic circle, we have a whole host of worries, concerns, wants, desires, all of those things, right? Life is happening to us. We are happening to life. But when you enter the magic circle, I want all players to leave all of that stuff behind and fully engage with what's being presented. Now, to make that easier, What we need is something that is alien, something that makes us sit up and take notice. And the best way to do that is by environment design, where you have a novel environment, something that you haven't experienced before. And Bangalore Creative Circus is going to be that. Very few people in the community that we have been to Bangalore Creative Circus. The beautiful art that's hanging, the very sustainable approach that they have, the cafe, the artwork, all of these things combine to provide a very novel experience. That's just one part. But the other part is the aura of a convention itself. When you have so many other people actively participating in a similar activity as what you're doing, that is going to be also adding to the release of like oxytocin and serotonin. And that's going to be promoting the access to the magic circle as well. So as a venue, Bangalore Creative Circus is a no-brainer, right? Because it's got great lighting, it's very novel, and it's also very airy and very pleasant to be in. That's why we went with Bangalore Creative Circus.
How do sponsors fit into the world of an indie community-driven event like this? What makes a sponsor right for TTRPGCon?
Sponsors are an important stakeholder of the TTRPGCon experience, all right? And I'll be honest, without sponsors, this event would not be happening. So thank you. Now, when we went around asking for sponsorship, we had specific criteria in mind. Now, there were plenty of places that we could have gone, and there were plenty of places that we did approach. But in the end, we ended up being very particular about the kind of sponsors we let in. Of course, as a first-time event runner, we had a lot of desperation, right? Where we're like, oh, I will take anything you got. But as we started thinking about this experience, and as we thought about what is it that we want for the players, we became a lot more intentional about the kind of sponsors we let on. Here are some of the things that we considered. First is, how closely are they aligned with the three main goals that we have? Get people to play TTRPGs, get people to try new TTRPGs, and help them join the community. And when we went around doing that, when we started asking these questions, we looked at our networks to see who would be a good fit. One of the sponsors that we have, as Olives, is a hobby store that's going to be opening up in Bangalore as well. Now, I know the proprietor from before, and we have interacted in the past as well. But the fact that they're opening up a store in a very different part of Bangalore, which I might as well be like a different city for me, that was like a big plus. But beyond that, they're not just focusing on board games. Board game sponsorship is relatively easier than TTRPG sponsorships. But one of the store managers is not only a stand-up comedian, but also a dungeon master. One of their other managers from Chennai is a dear friend, and they are also a keeper for Call of Cthulhu. And they have this DNA in them where they are focusing on games such as Magic the Gathering or Cardfight Vanguard and Flesh and Blood and things like that, which fall into the fringes when it comes to board game conversation. So that was an important choice, and it was a conscious choice as well. The next one was Cafe Maple Syrup, right? Now, Akhil, the proprietor, good friend as well. But one of the reasons why we approached him as opposed to other cafes was how enthusiastic he is about TTRPG. He runs his own games, and he has a regular meetup as well. But not only that, he likes to indulge in the role-playing aspect of things, right? He's 3D printed his own cyberpunk katana and the Oni mask, and he did that for Halloween. And I'm like, dude, this is good. This is the kind of vibe that we want. The people who are, look, I'm a capitalist, all right? I understand money needs to be made, but it is a happy win if not just money, but like if you love the hobby, right? If that is in your DNA, that's like a big plus. Another sponsor we have is BGC, and they are amazing, like a very fun bunch of people. They also have ridiculous amounts of stamina. They play Blood on the Clock Tower till like 4 a.m. or something. But the cool thing is they also have this joie de vivre, this drive to practice and to play games that are beyond just board games. Of course, they play board games. There's no doubt about that. But beyond that, they're also into the fringe, right? So I think this is a driving philosophy. Members on the fringe of the board games ecosystem in India, they were the ones that we approached first. There were others as well, such as Origin Alley, right? We wanted to get them on board And fortunately for them, they're opening up a new store, so they couldn't make it this time. And we hesitated in reaching out to other cafes because they didn't have that culture of TTRPGs already. So perhaps for the future runs, we will reach out to them. We also said no to some people where the culture fit was not okay. I really wish I had the heart to say, you know what, we need the money, let's go. But I didn't want that, right? So anybody who would have spoiled the experience per se, or who did not actually get what we're trying to do, even after explanation, we have tabled them and we will approach them in the future as well. So that's how we've been approaching sponsors and sponsorship and making sure that our vision of TTRPGCon can come to life.
TTRPGs often mirror real-world teamwork, empathy, and problem solving. How do you see events like this influencing what people do at work?
When I started Dungeons and Dragons, it was me running a game for about 6 people at a WeWork in Bangalore. And all these 6 people were friends that I knew from Toastmasters, and one of them is my wife. But that's how I got started. And of course, when I started at that time, I had no clue as to how TTRPGs would change my life. But today, looking back after 5, 6 years, what I noticed is that there's a lot of bleed that happens from playing tabletop role-playing games. I am looking at skills like empathy, like communication, like problem solving, like diffusing difficult situations, or being curious and not judgmental. These are just a short list of the different skills I have internalized by just running games. When I look at other players who have been playing the game, maybe not for as long, like even for just a year or so, I've seen them become more open, a lot more confident, being able to communicate better, being able to solve problems. And that stuff is not easy. That stuff, unfortunately, is not something that you can train for without giving actual practice. And TTRPGs are the best way for us to actually practice these skills. Combine all of these things with real-world teamwork, and you can see that there is a myriad of applications in the learning and development space as well. That's what my business is all about. And I feel that TTRPGs are the perfect vehicle for us to acquire these leadership skills, these soft skills, as they call them, because it gives you this sandbox where you can practice all of these things, experiment with the different frameworks you learn and whatnot, and see how that works with others in real time. And if it doesn't work, it's okay, because that's what a sandbox is. And going forward, I see a lot of potential for TTRPGs, not just as a corporate learning and development educational tool, but for schools, but for colleges, where younger people can internalize these skills in a low-risk environment and kill goblins and dragons while they're doing it, right? And I think that has got to be one of the most amazing things that TTRPGs have to offer.
If you had to describe the spirit of TTRPGCon in one word or phrase, what would it be?
If I had to describe the essence of TTRPGCon, it would be new games, new worlds, new friends. Yes, I spent a lot of time thinking about that, but that is the promise of TTRPGCon, right? You're getting to experience a new entire universe of games. And when you start playing other systems, you get to experience whole new worlds that open up for you. And of course, when you join communities, when you play with other people, you end up making new friends.
Finally, how can people who are curious get involved or contribute to future editions?
Specifically, here are some things that you can do. Number 1, play more games, right? That will get you more and more comfortable and get you more involved and immersed in the world of TTRPGs. Second, once you've actually, got a few games under your belt, consider becoming a game master. I made a free course, puttheplayerfirst.com/course. It's on YouTube, and it's the 10,000 Game Masters course. It will help you figure out how you can build and run your first homebrew adventure on any system that you choose. And once you do that, start running games. That would be step 3, right? And as you start running games, you will start developing taste. You'll start developing opinions, which is awesome. Because that contrast, that differing perspectives, that's what we want to capture at TTRPGCon. And once you've done all of those, please reach out to us wherever you're watching this video, and we will get you hooked up to the community so that you can start being a more integral part of TTRPGCon as well.
When I think about how TTRPGCon and organizing this event and the effort we put in so far ties back to hacking attention, here's what I'm thinking. First off, when I'm trying to run a convention, it needs sustained collective attention. I need to coordinate a massive number of people and volunteers and game masters. And my takeaway from there is that to make focus scale, I need systems and not individuals. That's a very important learning for me. Tabletop RPGs themselves, they are a wonderful tool to facilitate shared focus, right? Because players are coming together, they're sharing the narrative flow, and without any distractions of phone or any other screens, what they're doing is collaboratively, they're paying attention to the same thing. And they're doing this voluntarily. So it is possible with narratives, with the right sort of an environment, you can get people to pay attention to whatever is happening. Next, when I am trying to hack attention of people, keeping in mind the design of the environment and engineering it to a specific goal, whether it's through lighting, sound, props, people, vibes, culture, finance, all of those are very, very important ingredients in me being able to hack attention and direct it to wherever people are focusing. Another idea is the concept of the magic circle. The mere fact that it exists means that when people are choosing to play, when they are intentionally choosing to be present instead of being distracted by whatever's happening around them, they are more open to ideas. And especially with the concept of bleed, we can intentionally design experiences where people are opting in. And in that opted in state, we can load the ideas and behaviors that we want from them. In summary, looking at TTRPGCon and tying it back to hacking attention, the fundamental premise is that we have to design for voluntary engagement. It has to be intrinsic. People cannot be forced to engage with something. If you can design an experience where people willingly and want to engage with that said experience, then you're going to have a much, much, much easier time in terms of grabbing their attention and directing it towards what you want. Those are my key takeaways upon self-reflection. I'd love to hear what are yours.